with Brad, Jim, and Will. What have they been watching lately? They're husky, hairy, huggable homos. Movie Bears Podcast.
Hello all and welcome to the Movie Bears Podcast. I'm Brad Harris, and each week I'm joined by some of my favorite husky, hairy, huggable homos to review a film either current or classic. This week we're definitely going current. We are reviewing In the Heights by director John M. Chu, based of course on the stage play of the same name by Lin-Manuel Miranda. We are excited to talk about this film with all of you. If you are joining us in the live chat, be sure to say hello. Let us know your thoughts on the film as we progress. We'd love to share some of those as we're talking it through. But before we dive into our movie discussion, let me first have you all say hello to Jordy, our little kitten.
Jordy
has just come to visit
Hi,
me.
Jordy. Hi.
Hi, Jordy LaFerge.
I love you, Jordy. Hi, Jordy.
I swear he was right here. He can be he's so fast. He could be in two places at once.
It's a blink cat.
He just barrel rolls from one place to another like magic.
That's what he does.
But Jim Pugliafico is also here. Babe, how are you doing?
I'm here. Thanks. I'm doing good. Glad to be talking about a new movie, another movie which we were lucky enough to see in the theaters, but we'll talk about that a little bit more when we get into it. But I'm happy to be here, and I hope we hear from some folks out there tonight.
Indeed. Well, Will Lindis is here too. Welcome, Will. How's it going?
Hey, Brad. Hey, Jim. Hey, Jordy. It's going great. It's always a blast when we get together to talk about movies. I think it's especially so when we get a chance to talk about something that has buzz around it, for good or for bad. Talking about the movie that's sort of the moment is always such a good time. So I'm really excited to dive into this one with you guys.
Ow. Jordy was really excited to get on my legs under my desk and then just spring off of them like it's a diving board.
Mm-hmm.
With his claws.
All claws.
Thanks, Jordy.
Active. Yeah, he's
Oops,
like those.
All claws.
He's kind of like the rattlesnake version of a cat. Like when they're young, they don't know how to, Like you hear the stories about young rattlesnakes. They're always the most venomous because they don't know how to control their venom output. He doesn't know how to control anything at this point.
Puppies are like that too. They learn by socializing, just how hard or how not hard to bite one another. So when they're still young, they can sometimes overbite too much because they just haven't learned.
They mean well. They mean
well. But poor Brad just took 1d4 points of damage.
Now I've got cat scars before a bear pool party this weekend. It'll be great.
That's the way.
I'd say they're in a sensitive enough place that no one will see them, but it's a bear pool party. So that's
bear pool party. Yeah. What are we talking about here?
Well, we've got a lot to talk about within the Heights. Of course, if you are new to the show and not familiar with our format, we typically talk about a movie spoiler-free for a little while before we take you to spoiler town. So if you haven't seen In the Heights yet and you're kind of on the fence, maybe you're not sure for some reason, you're looking for an opinion, we'll happily share ours with you. Maybe it will help. And then we'll give you fair warning before we open things up to spoilers. Looks like we've got a few folks with us in the live chat already. Hey, everybody. Good to see you. Welcome. Again, don't forget to say hello and share your thoughts as we talk about the film. But Jim and Will, are you ready to go back to Washington Heights and discuss this film?
Oh, you know it. Let's do it.
Yep. Let's go back.
All right. Well, then here we go. Our discussion of In the Heights. All right. So, Jim, I know you were a big fan of the musical stage play. We had an opportunity to see that here in Tucson a few years ago. And now, of course, we're seeing the movie version. Sometimes the movie versions of things don't always go well, and sometimes they do. Very curious, if you don't mind starting us out, just give us a brief setup of what this is, and what did you think? Was this a good translation from the stage play for you? Was it a great movie overall? Would you kind of take it or leave it? Where did she come down?
Well, I mean, let's see. There's been a lot of buzz around this movie. This movie was slated to come out about a year ago this time, if you remember right. It was over a year ago we were seeing trailers for this and getting excited to see it when it was probably in the winter of 2000. The early part of the year in 2000 when we started seeing trailers, and then that it was coming that summer, and then the pandemic hit and they basically shelved the movie for turns out almost a year, which is a lot of movies I guess had to do that, but we finally get it. And yeah, Brad, we had seen In the Heights is a movie adaptation of a musical play of the same name that came out, I think, in the mid 2000s. So it's probably 15 years old or so at this point. And they decided to turn it into a movie. This one is directed by John Chu. Interesting path for John Chu. We've got he's directed the Step Up movies, two of the Step Up movies that we've seen. G.I. Joe Retaliation, Gem and the Holograms. He was the director of Gem and the Holograms, which was kind of a musical-ish movie that we liked. And now, of course, Crazy Rich Asians. I don't remember if that was a musical. That might have had some musical. No,
not a musical.
Not a musical. It might have had some music in it. Yeah, I don't remember. But anyway, and now In the Heights, and he's scheduled to do the follow-up, I think, to Crazy Rich Asians. He's scheduled to do Wicked also, which is interesting. So another big musical. So he's been, he's pretty prolific in the last 15, 20 years. And this one is was done by written by, I forget the gentleman's name who wrote it. Hang with me while I figure it out. Oh, it's okay. I'm gonna have trouble with this name, I can tell you right now. Chiara, and this, I don't know if this is a female or a male. I can't tell. Sorry if I'm totally messing this up. Chiara Allegria Hudes. And that's who did the writing with, of course, Lin-Manuel Miranda being the writing the songs that are in here. Following up, he did this obviously before Hamilton. At the stage play, he wrote the songs in the stage play. So I went into this excited. I did like the stage play quite a bit. I was I'm kind of a sucker for well done musicals, and I think this is definitely a well done musical. I liked the story. It's a very personal story about, or it seems like a personal story about, it's about a lot of things. It's about relationships within a very close neighborhood, a section of New York called Washington Heights. A very, from what I'm told, is a very Latin populated neighborhood, Dominican, all types of Latins. And we'll get into that because there's a bit of a swirl around this movie regarding, colorism within the film, and we'll get into that. But I just loved the aliveness of this musical, right? He just kind of made a place that probably a lot of us didn't really know about or don't know about, kind of come alive on the screen, and on the stage. The songs, for the most part, I think there's several memorable songs in here that really propel the story. The story's about, it's got everything in it. There's coming of age. There's, how to embrace change, both in one's personal life and in one's surroundings. It's about family, of course. So many things going on here. as far as the movie goes, I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the heck out of this movie. Might have been a skosh too long for me, but I think there are parts of it where there is a plot in this movie related to the characters, and I think about 3/4 of the way through, they have to kind of move the plot along and resolve some plot things, and I think that's where it bogs down a little bit because you kind of lose the flavor of the jubilation of some of the music that's in here, which I think carries a lot of it, and I think that. Chasing the plot kind of waters down the feeling of the musical for me. And then it picks up a little bit again at the end. So yeah, this is a win for me. I'm glad we got to see it on the big screen. I think it's worth seeing on the big screen if you can. It's also available on HBO Max right now if you've got that service to watch. If maybe if going to the movie theater is still something you're not super comfortable with, give it a shot, watch it, turn up the sound so you can hear, immerse yourself in the music. But I think seeing it on the big screen, if you can and you want to, is the way to go at this one. But yeah, this is a winner for me.
All right. So big win from Jim. We got a couple comments, babe, while you were kind of giving us your rundown. One from Justin D, who says, I like musicals and I'm loving the review. Hey, Justin, so glad to have you with us this week. Glad to hear that you're enjoying the review, and even more important, that you like musicals so much. Justin, feel free to let us know, if you saw In the Heights, what you thought specifically about that one. I'm very curious. We also had another comment from the super handsome Sean G, who says, it was a lovely film. And this was in the trailer, so it's not a spoiler. He loved the scene where Sonny was freestyling at the public pool, and that the movie felt really grounded. He enjoyed it, especially since he has friends that live in the Heights.
Oh, cool.
And that's awesome, Sean, that you mentioned that. A friend of ours who's living with us for a little while is from New York City, and he has been to the Heights, and he went and saw the movie with us. And Jim, I think you were kind of alluding to some of his comments, but he's got some connections there too, I think. And it's very cool that a movie like this could maybe feel so grounded, even though it is a musical where everyone is singing their thoughts and feelings. But Jim, I'm so glad that it tripped your trigger so much. Everyone
has a want, you know what I mean?
That's right.
That's right.
A little dream. Will, how about you? Especially with you coming from a theater background, musical background, your love of musicals, did this translate well for you? What did you think about the film?
Yeah, so it's interesting. In the Heights is one that I've never seen staged before, but I've listened to a few times. But I'm one of those people who I usually can't completely absorb myself into a musical until I've seen it, either stage production or even sometimes like when they do like a filmed version of the stage production, right? So I was aware of it, liked the music quite a bit, but this was definitely like, I don't come into this with like, as like an In the Heights stan or anything like that. And I'll start by saying I really loved this movie. I had a wonderful time all the way through it. As I'm watching this movie, my face started hurting because I couldn't stop going from like grin to tears to grin to tears again, which is it's an experience that I really wanted from some of this. There's such joy and such jubilance, not just within the song and the book itself, but within the way that it's staged. We get to see some things that definitely feel very modern and contemporary in terms of the way things are staged. We also get to see some shots that really harken back to like old school Hollywood, old school Broadway as well. And I think that's the magic of Lin-Manuel Miranda as a creator. He is the type of guy, he is a blender of things. In this case, he's able to take the a love of Broadway musicals, and he has a deep well of knowledge of productions, as well as taking Afro-Cuban beats, that 3/2 clave, that dun 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 dun, and turning it into like the rhythm of a part of the city, and in a way that feels accessible both to people that like Broadway musicals and people that enjoy those more contemporary styles of music. It's really a magical touch that he has there, and John Chu does a wonderful job of translating that to screen. All of the cast is a lot of fun here. I mean, I've been just absolutely enamored with Anthony Ramos since seeing all of his work in like Hamilton, but seeing him here in the lead role, the Usnavi role in The Heights. I mean, the dude is an absolute star. I think that he eats up the camera. He does there's a lot of great dancing, like musical numbers, but there's also shots where it just zooms in on Anthony Ramos's face and he gives like a half wink or a partial smile or something like that.
The camera really loves him. Yeah.
The camera loves him and he loves that camera. And it's such a delight to see someone who, like, I feel like Anthony Ramos went from guy that we know from Hamilton, collectively, to guy who very well could be like the next household name here in a few years, and that's cool as hell. But the entire cast is really good here. Jimmy Schmitz was fun to see in this role. I love Stephanie Beatriz on Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and she's only in this for a little bit, but gosh, is she so good. Of course, we have Corey Hawkins, who we saw in the what was the name of the NWA movie? Now I can't remember it, but I mean, he played Dre. He played Dre in that. It's so nice to see, just like
Straight Outta Compton.
Straight Outta Compton. Yes. Yeah, he played Dr. Dre in Straight Outta Compton, and he's another guy who definitely feels like stars on the rise. I even we got to see Lin-Manuel Miranda and Christopher Jackson in some roles here, which was really nice because, they're the throwbacks to the original cast. So this film knows its history, but it also knows where it sits in the present. It feels very true to the original story. It updated a couple of things to sort of match a few things that are happening kind of in the news politically right now. But it does it all in such an organic way. I loved this movie. It broke my face a few times, and it just gave me just such a euphoric feeling. I struggle where to docket points, and that's always a good feeling when you come out of a movie, just to feel like, you know what, I just want to cheerlead this movie. That's where I feel like I am right now. So yeah, In the Heights is good. I saw it theatrically. It has good energy theatrically. Have not yet had a chance to go back and watch it on HBO Max. That is coming for me, because I think this one does. I think I'll enjoy it on a rewatch as well. But yeah, this is the goods. I strongly recommend it.
All right. Well, another big win from Will. I guess
just tell us whether you bought the soundtrack or not.
That's the truth. That's Brad. Have you been listening to 96,000 or not?
Yes, I have. But here's the thing: the soundtrack is on Apple Music, so I feel like I have to qualify this. I could listen to 96G for free, but I went out of my way to actually buy the soundtrack rather than listening to it as part of my Apple Music subscription. So I already have the Broadway soundtrack, but the movie soundtrack was phenomenal. And I guess tipping my hat, I really love the movie as well for all the reasons that you guys mentioned. I kind of want to leave you guys have, for the most part, touched on the things that I really love too. So I'm not going to belabor some of those points. But I will say this movie had me just feeling so many emotions. And for me, that's the mark of a really phenomenal, film, play, whatever it is, if I'm feeling lots of stuff. I can't tell you how many movies I see where it's just kind of like, oh, okay, well, it's a movie, whatever, that was a thing. But I don't feel much. You can ask Jim and our friend Kevin, who went to see this with us. I was ugly crying several times during this thing. I was laughing a lot. I was kind of dancing around in my seat a little bit. It was just tripping. All of the triggers. It doesn't sound like either of you have had a chance to rewatch yet. Jim, don't hate me, but I actually put this in the background today because today was a little slow for me at work while I was just kind of working on a few things that didn't require a lot of attention because there were some parts that I wanted to go back and rewatch with the subtitles turned on. I don't know if it was the sound in our movie theater or, just the sound mixing of the film or what, but some of the songs, they're rapid fire anyway. And especially like Benny's number. Like Benny's number at the beginning, 3/4 of that, I didn't understand the words he was singing when we saw the movie. And I was like, I feel cheated. So I went back and rewatched it on HBO Max today. And I got to see all the things I missed the first time. And I feel like it really enhanced my viewing, actually, to see this again. And Jim will attest, he's popped his head into my office at several points ever since we saw the movie while I've been working. And Jim, what's been playing when you've been in my office?
Yeah, the soundtrack, several songs. Breathe, the grandmother song, which I call it. I don't know what the name of it is.
Grandmother song.
But when we get into spoilers, I'm going to talk about some of the, some of the sections that, kind of stuck out to me.
Oh, I think Brad may have froze.
Oh, Brad froze. Sorry about that.
He was like mid-smile, so I'm just like, oh, he really is liking what Jim's saying.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, one of the things I wanted to mention, Will, and so for part of my childhood, so I'm a kid who grew up in a bunch of different, I'm mostly a suburban kid, but for a section of my childhood, I grew up in a city. It wasn't a big city, certainly wasn't New York. So I understand kind of about neighborhoods. I grew up in a very ethnic neighborhood, even though I wasn't of the ethnicity of most of the people in my neighborhood. It was a Lithuanian neighborhood, actually. And I just love being kind of in a culture like that. It kind of brought me back to kind of being immersed in a culture that wasn't necessarily the culture I was maybe born and bred into, but you're exposed to it and you become woven. It becomes part of you. And so it was more of an inner city kind of area of the city I grew in. So I just love that feeling. And I guess that part of it also resonated with me, being able to kind of experience that tight inner city. It's a little claustrophobic, kind of the settings here. You get that sense both indoors and outdoors. Things like public pools, like there's a big public pool scene in this movie. It's not a spoiler yet because that is in the trailer. And yeah, I would go to the public pool and we didn't do dance numbers in the pool, but it did bring back a lot of memories for me. So there were some intangibles here in this movie that kind of made me love it even more.
I mean, that's fascinating to think about, Jim, because it's something that I don't necessarily have that same background. So for me, growing up in an area that is like suburban Texas, where we have a lot of sprawl here,
Right.
So the experience that I didn't have firsthand was the whole the people on your street or the people in that kind of like neighborhood, you see them very regularly because, you go to the same shops, you go to the same laundromat or whatever, everyone, here, pop in your car, drive across town and go do the different, the what have yous to it. That said, I think there is a certain amount of parallelism and I don't want to kind of distract from, I think the very important, both cultural things that are happening as well as just kind of like the draw of the neighborhoods themselves here. But I think within the queer community, there is a certain parallel in that I live in Austin and, the queer scene here, the bear scene here, whichever way you want to slice that particular part of it, you do end up seeing a lot of the same people and a lot of different things. And you become like these relationships that you develop within that community become these really strong bonds, these kind of interwoven like meshes that feel feel like, you're going through shared struggle. You've got someone to lean on if something's, not going as well for you, or just like when you go into a place, that you're going to be greeted by people who, who will uplift you the same way you uplift them, and obviously it's not always like that, but that's the advantageous part of it. And I saw a lot of that reflected here. I loved watching through the course of this movie, like the neighborhood itself really became such a core part of the lives of everyone that lived in it. The shared experiences, whether it be through the dispatch, whether it be through kind of the encroachment of gentrification, which we see.
That was touched on. Yeah.
Yeah. And not just that. Yeah. Well, it became sort of like it became like a baseline to this movie. It did,
except for one clunky scene that I thought was kind of in there, and it kind of turned me off a little bit.
Well, and we'll get to the kind of the specifics on it, but for me, it was like the gentrification that we see in here. We have it both as a narrative plot point, and also we see it through. I mean, this is opening number stuff, so I feel okay sharing this. There were lines that were reworked from the musical. Originally, the Usnavi character is much more of like almost like a ringleader for the play, sort of like talking not just about the neighborhood, but also referencing the people in the audience about like, hey, I bet you've never go before above 96th Street or something like that, and that's usually him saying that directed to the audience. They twist that line around here, and they actually have a woman who's like kind of a hipster character who voices that line with sort of a wink and a nod. So already we see 3 minutes in, 5 minutes in, we start to see intrusions upon this neighborhood by people who are not of the neighborhood, who are there kind of for tourism reasons. And I think that's really interesting because the truth of the matter is a lot of these neighborhoods, not just in New York City, but every city, going back to Austin, we have a ton of this happening. The cooler, more interesting parts of the city, the places that people have lived in for a long time and built personality and style around, people are starting to get priced out of those places that they have grown up in because of all of the outside forces that are coming in. So I liked watching that through this movie.
Yeah. I mentioned, we'll get into it maybe in spoilers, but there was one scene that tried to, I think, bring that more to the surface. And I thought it was, I don't know. I just didn't, it was a little too ham-fisted, like for me. And I think it involved Vanessa. But
okay. Let's talk a little bit while I know Brad's getting back in here. We'll talk a little bit more. How about Jim? Maybe you and I talk for just a couple more minutes, spoiler free, and then then we'll switch over to spoilers. And Brad will come back and join us. And I can't wait to hear more of what he has to say. By the way, But I want to talk a little bit about the music. I would love to hear if there were any songs that especially resonated with you for whatever reason.
Yeah, I think usually the first reason is musically. The two numbers that stood out to me kind of musically and energy wise were the 96,000 number. I thought was fantastic. That was done kind of in the pool and in the park. And it's featured a lot in the trailer because I think it's a really standout number. The other number, I can't remember the name of it. You may have to help me here, but it was toward the tail end of the movie, and it was it was a celebration because they're kind of in the alley, everybody
Carnaval del Barrio.
Yeah, that was also one of my favorite ones, and I don't know, maybe just the way these were written. And you guys mentioned there's another slower one in the film, I think, that's supposed to have a more of an emotional impact on me for some reason. And this is where I'm weird. Like, I am a crier in movies, but that scene didn't do it for me for some reason. I'm like, what is wrong with me? Like, I'm supposed to be crying here, and it's not really doing it for me. Maybe it's because I saw it coming a mile away, or I don't know. But it's something. But how about for you?
So the song that you're referencing was one of my standouts there. The Paciencia y Fe, Patience and Faith, really, really worked for me. I love songs. This is like the musical theater nerd in me. I love songs that have both a sort of like a hint introduction at an earlier point in the musical that then come back and become almost like a motif of their own for a particular scene, and then lines or notes or like even little sections of it maybe even reflect later on in the musical to harken back to that. This is one of those. You hear little snippets of that Paciencia y Fe kind of like throughout the musical for different reasons. I think that it's hard to not fall in love with 96,000 because I think that it's one of the more I think that if you were to say to someone, like to show someone who has not seen this yet, just one musical segment and say, this is why I think you should watch it, I think 96,000 is probably a pretty good gateway drug for this movie. It's got a lot of fun choreography. Everyone kind of has their hand on their ball a little bit in terms of what's going on. It's not quite revealed what's going on with the story, so it wouldn't be super spoilery, but it does sort of like get you in the midst of like what these characters kind of want and the way that they see the world and the things that they want out of the world. All of that crammed into, just a 5-minute package. So I think that's another standout for me. We have a couple of comments I think would be worth reading out here, and I can't share them on screen, but I can read them out. Sean says, I feel like y'all three should come up with a musical too, just like the film. Jim, what do you think? What would be the name of our musical?
Oh my God. The Three Bears comes to mind.
Yes.
We could do a musical version of the Three Bears. It's Daddy Bear,
Daddy Bear, also Daddy Bear, and also Daddy Bear.
Yeah, exactly.
This is too hard. This one's also too hard. This one's also too hard. We might need to differentiate a little bit. Justin D, he says, so much positivity. Sounds like I should buy it instead of rent it first.
Ooh.
What do you think about that?
It depends. I guess it depends. Like if you're somebody who would buy movies typically, and you think you're inclined to like, musicals, if you liked Hamilton, I would say, if you like something, and we didn't even talk about it, but it's funny because before this film in the movie theater, there was a trailer for West Side Story, the new West Side Story, that they put on the screen.
Yes.
This musical obviously kind of owes a lot of its core, I think, to something like West Side Story, right? And it's kind of gritty inner city feel. This movie isn't about a clash of ethnicities or gangs or really anything like that. It's not that. But just kind of the setting, the great songwriting. I think it really kind of owes a lot to that, and you can probably see that Lin-Manuel Miranda or even Chiara Algeria Hudes had that in mind. So we're going to get West Side Story later this year, so we have that, another big musical to look forward to. So I'm excited about that too.
That's a hell of a comparison, and for a few reasons. Obviously, showing they're both city musicals that predominantly focus on Latinx communities. That's right. That's the obvious comparison too. But one of the other things that you definitely see is in Lin-Manuel Miranda's sort of like interpretation of the music. I mentioned it before, that 3/2 clave. That's like a big thing that Leonard Bernstein, right?
Yes.
Did when he was coming up with a lot of the music for West Side Story. That boom, 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 and it kind of forms this rhythm all the way through. I love that. I love that because it almost creates like a, I mentioned before, I like within a musical where like kind of it references parts of the musical.
Or a motif is used and it's kind of woven in non super obvious ways into other parts of the musical. I love that as well. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a spot very early on where just like as they're walking down and kind of like getting the kind of the feel for the street, there's a guy with the hose and he goes spray, 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 spray. And it really makes you feel this like, like that what we're doing is we're being transformed into this world where like, the music, the choreography, the story, just everything is so interwoven just into the daily lives of these characters that you fall in love with. And because it's also referential to the musical style as a whole, plus like the references from West Side Story and Take the A Train and just all of these different things throughout music, Broadway history. I think it's just really cool. Like you have motifs within the musical and you have motifs that draw from other sequences as well. I nerd out on that stuff. I love it. It's my favorite thing about Broadway is that one song at the end of every play that like references every motif throughout the rest of the musical. Like it always just emotionally destroys me. We do have another. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. No, go with comments.
Yeah, I've got one other comment here, but I feel like that one we're gonna have to save for spoilers. So I'll read it now, but we're gonna put a pin in it because the question is, out of curiosity, do y'all think we may end up getting a sequel to the musical? And if so, what should the focus be on? I love that question. I think before we dive into that, we maybe need to talk about some of the deep dive spoilers. But before we do, Jim, are there any other things that we haven't talked about yet with this in this pre-spoiler section that we should?
I don't know. I think we've covered all we can and should talk about in non-spoilers. I will just say that, I think that one of the things I want to call out here is, part of a musical that's not always talked about is kind of the choreography, right? And like how these things are staged and how that plays with the choreography that's filming it and putting it on the camera are, it has to be visually interesting as well to get the whole effect. And this one has that in many scenes. There's a lot of great dancing. There's, the choreography, the staging, the art design, and just how it's filmed. There's some, and I don't think this is a spoiler, but there's some like really crane or drone shots of musical scenes in the street and in the pool.
Yeah,
that were like, oh, that's super cool, like how they did that. And I think this movie was visually interesting. You talked about, and not just that. So okay, right. So they can capture the energy of these dance and musical numbers, but there's also like the blocking of how they handled kind of the more intimate scenes. You talked about how the camera loved Anthony Ramos's face right on the character was Navi. He's very photogenic, and so is Melissa Barrera as Vanessa, and even Leslie Grace as Olga as Abuela. Right, she gets her close up. So you get the intimate stuff, and you get the pullback, and you get the really beautiful and energetic dancing scenes. So I wanted to call that out too in non-spoilers. I think it's a spectacle in spots, and it's very, very intimate in other spots.
You're right, Jim, because I think that it's hard sometimes to translate music and dance to screen in a way that both feels diegetic, like part of the scene itself, while also still feeling as kinetic as like a Broadway show does. And I've seen it go wrong. You can just pull back and just show a dance number and that be your entire musical, or you can get so invested in some of like the kind of like the realism stuff that you lose that music. I think about the Rent movie from 2004 or so. Like I enjoy Rent quite a bit, but I think that it lost a little bit of its like energy in the screen translation. But there's this one shot in this movie that I think captures that perfect blend of like cinema plus dance. And it's Anthony Ramos is like looking out the window of the convenience store. And this is in the trailer too. It's like, I think it's the money shot of the show. He's looking out he's looking out the window of the bodega, and you see the reflection of all of the people dancing on the street in the glass. And so you get that like, and that's something that is very specific to film. You know, you get to see that dance movement, but seeing it reflected through the glass and seeing him in real time looking out there and watching it, and how he's like feeling about just seeing that part of his community. It was, I mean, that's magic. Like that might, like, it's very possible if we were to do at the end of the year, like what our favorite shot of the year is. Like right now, this is my number one with a bullet, is him looking out the window of the bodega.
That was wonderful. Yeah, wonderful scene. So I'll just say, Will, for both of us, that unfortunately Brad's having technical difficulties right now, and he's trying like hell to kind of get back into our session here. But in order to keep things going for the people who have joined us, Will and I will continue and try to finish strong. Will, if you're okay, I think maybe we'll jump into spoilers. I don't remember the spiel, but in just a few seconds, we're gonna spoil the crap out of In the Heights. So if you haven't seen it yet and you don't want to be spoiled, go ahead and jump, 15 minutes ahead to our plug section at the end of the episode, so you don't get spoiled, because spoilers for In the Heights are in effect right now. Will, let's talk about some of the stuff that's in the movie. What I wanted to ask you what you thought, and I know we both love this film. What did you think of the very ending conceit, we'll call it, with Usnavi and how they handled that resolution of Usnavi's conflict?
Yeah, and to even talk about that, I think we have to talk a little bit about the musical too, because there's a bit of a switcheroo that gets pulled here with the movie. So we are in spoilers, and because of that, I'm going to give away the big conceit of this, which is at the very beginning of this, we see this framing device of Usnavi is on the beach. He's like he's got his little shop open. There's some kids
not
there.
In Washington Heights.
He is not in Washington Heights. He is telling the story of Washington Heights to these kids, and this is nowhere in the Broadway show. That's his aspiration, but it's not his reality. So they put this framing device in, and here at the end, and this is, Jim, what you were alluding to, like we find out that he's got this opportunity. He's got the plane ticket. He's about to go do that thing. And he realizes that where he needs to be is here in the Heights, in that community, that it's become such a part of him that he could never leave it behind, that his dream used to be to flee, to go back, and to build a new life. And he's realized that the new life that he's trying to build was right here all along. Maybe maybe Washington in the Heights was the true friends you made along the way, or something along those lines, right? But so we find out that framing device was just sort of like an imagining of things. He's made the bodega now because of some stuff with graffiti Pete, just like spraying on the walls. He's made it his own little island paradise right there inside of the store. And he does accomplish the life that he wants, but just right there in New York. And I love that. I love that.
I loved it. And you almost couldn't see it really any other way. It was one of those where the movie was setting you up to kind of think maybe, oh, well, he finally made it. Usnavi felt and talked about his destiny being returning to the island. What was the island? Where was it? Was it Barbados? Where was it?
No, I think it was Dominican.
It was Dominican Republic?
Right? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So he wanted to go back to the Dominican Republic, where he was born and then brought to the U.S. at a very young age. And so you're kind of rooting for him on one side to be like, yeah, we want him to fulfill his destiny. It seems like that's what's going to make him happy and feel complete. And that's his dream, right? To go back to that beach and open up his father's old bar, a beach bar,
Mhm.
I think it was, which would have been
Yeah.
cool, right? Which would have been really cool.
God, I want to go to that beach bar right now. Like that looked
I know, right?
amazing, right?
I know it did look like it could be amazing, especially with somebody like Usnavi running it. But then in the back of your mind, you're like, he's created an amazing life and legacy there in Washington Heights, and he's
Yeah.
so integrated into that community. You almost can't see him being ripped out of that. So the whole thing was, the way it was set up in the film though was weird, because he was actually like, it looked like he was actually on a beach, which was all intended to be imaginary, right?
Right.
Because he was actually sitting in his bodega telling the stories with a mural of the beach and the forest and stuff behind him. But it felt like a rug being pulled out a little bit. It was like, oh man, what are you doing? But it did not ruin the movie in any sense.
I liked that. I liked that approach. All things told, because I think what it really did was it set an expectation. I don't think that it was like, it wasn't one of those things where I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they did that. But I don't think it needed to be like a dramatic, like upending surprise to be effective. This was a story about someone who had that conflict, like you mentioned, of, I want to go do this thing, but I have all these connections here, this push-pull relationship from, Dominican Republic and Washington Heights, and him trying to figure, and what he was able to do was find a way of basically marrying the things that he loved about both. He was able to like find ways of connecting with his culture and with the people in his life that are important, but all through the things around him around him. And I think that made the story stronger, seeing it this way, because we got to see how he saw the world, and we also got to see the world that he inhabits. We got to fall in love with Washington Heights with him, to the point where I think if he had gotten on that plane at the end, it would have, like, we would have been screaming, no, you idiot, it's right there, what you wanted the whole time.
Right.
And when a movie has a good, satisfying ending, that's everything, right? Like that's what we go to these things for. I also want to talk a little bit about and I mentioned it before, but we really had to tap dance around it. But Paciencia y Fe, the Abuela song, that was my favorite part of the movie. I think that it was well performed. It was absolutely beautifully sung by Olga Meredith, and it was also produced very well. The other shot that I absolutely adored, there's a moment where she's sort of like reaching for this like light, and then it like kind of shifts, and now she's standing on a subway, and she's going through, and she's singing this, and she's in this part where she has basically her own kind of like struggle, she's been invited to go back with Usnavi when he goes, but she also has enjoyed the matronly role that she's created within the community there. And yes, she does pass afterwards, but I think that the thing that was most important to me was seeing her with not only like these choices laid out before her, but also just seeing like this lineage of people like whose life she's touched, and who came and who inspired her, forming this literal line behind her in those tunnels, and then they snap into line. And I mean, that's the just the beauty of that choreography absolutely just knocked my breath out of me. So that even though, like, yeah, I mean, just like you, I think we're sitting down there, we're like, okay, we know that this is going to happen. We know where this is going to go, but that didn't matter. It was effective. It got down into my gut and stayed there.
Yeah. I mentioned it too, in that I felt like there was something wrong with me. Like, this is a well-produced number in the film. It was a character that I did like. And here she is, she's passed away suddenly, and kind of unexpectedly, I guess you could say, because this was the type of character that if you knew her, she was always around, right? She was always there. She was kind of a rock for the family, a rock for the neighborhood, and her influence was, everyone in the community kind of knew who she was. So, but then when she passed in the number, I'm like, I'm not feeling it. I don't know why, because I don't know if it was because we just didn't know enough about her. I mean, I think we learned more about her during the song than we knew about her going in. And maybe that was it for me. I don't know, but it's a wonderful song. It's well performed, and I loved the kind of the haunting way that it's produced in the, and shot in the movie. It just didn't resonate for me for some reason. And, maybe on second watch, it'll do that for me.
A couple of interesting comments. First of all, I want to read one from, it looks like a Brad Harris. Yeah, it's our very own Brad
Harris.
He couldn't be with us because of the technical issues that hit the beginning of the show. But he says, "You heartless monster. P.S. I love you still."
That was for me.
That was for you for being like stone-hearted, not crying. But someone who maybe had a similar reaction to you, maybe not for that particular scene, but for some of the other ones, is Steve, who in the comments says, movie was good, but seemed a lot of characters didn't get an ending. Plus, it did go on a bit too long. I remember you'd mentioned that earlier. Still a solid 8 out of 10, little predictable.
Steve, I know you want everybody to have an ending, but this is not The Walking Dead where everybody dies. I'm just saying right now, this is not that kind of movie. No, I'm kidding. I'm teasing.
Maybe that's, if we're going to double back around to the comment that we got earlier from Sean. He had asked us if they made a sequel to this, what would it be about? And, you had just referenced like, oh, they didn't kill everyone off. Is that your answer? Would In the Heights 2 basically be zombie apocalypse?
No, I think they'll find a way to make the story where he is a little older, and maybe he has children or a child, and he does decide to maybe live in both places somehow and open up that bar, like open up that bar in the Dominican Republic. I think that would be pretty awesome if they could figure out a way to do that story-wise without kind of totally cutting his ties with Washington Heights. I'm sure they could do it. I'm sure a good story writer could do it. I think if they were going to do it, I think that's what they would have to do.
I think you're onto something. There's something in musical sequels. I mean, sequels in general, where whenever there's like two paths that the characters have to explore and one gets chosen, the sequel will sometimes shift locations over to that other choice or to that other location and let you play in that other space as well. So, I mean, yeah, maybe we could do an In the Heights 2 where Usnavi does go back to the Dominican Republic with his family a little bit later, and he gets to connect with the people there, and maybe he now has to make a choice of, does he go back to Washington Heights or does he stay with this new life here? That could be super compelling. I'm super in on that. Comment here from Tony. He says, joined late. Hello, Bears. Mm-hmm. Hello, Tony. Yep. Better late than never. We love having you here.
And a follow-up from Steve. He said he was just kind of wondering about the undocumented kid. So, and the girl who went back to college, and maybe the neighborhood grandma will come back as a zombie. Yeah, I don't know about that third part, but the other two were very compelling characters. We didn't really talk much about that. Will, maybe you can help me out with the names here, but there was a younger teenage kid who worked
Sonny.
at the bodega, Sonny, who was a cousin, I think, of Usnavi, and also a girl who was also, I think, a cousin of his, that was Jimmy Smits's daughter, and she was the one who supposedly made it out of Washington Heights. She got accepted to Stanford. She was there, and she basically decided for reasons. I think there may have been some scholastic reasons that maybe college just wasn't her thing. They also kind of talked a little bit about maybe some racial issues she may have run into there, which was disturbing. And again, that was kind of like thrown at us in one scene. But yeah, they were very compelling characters, and the idea of more of the girl who went to college and came back for a visit, only to find out that she was not going back to Stanford, was a little bit heartbreaking, right? I mean, here's somebody, they showed somebody who had these dreams. Her dad had dreams for her. She was fulfilling these dreams, but sometimes maybe the dream isn't really cut out to be your reality, right? I think that was the message there.
Well, I might say that so this one ended. She's the at the end of this movie, she's going back to Stanford. Like
She decided to go back.
Yeah, and part of that was, and this is the sad part, was the stuff that happened a little bit earlier with the Jimmy Smits character, Kevin, and Patrick Page, the guy that ran the laundromat in this, is that encroached. He didn't play a character that we necessarily love.
No.
He was the gentrification, but he is one of my favorite Broadway actors. He is in Hadestown. In fact, we're such big fans. We had him do a cameo for Scott's birthday because so the laundromat guy was like, I got him to do a birthday message for Scott because we love him in Hadestown. But anyways, nice. Yeah. What I thought was neat about this was I liked Daniela's story so much because she is. No, I'm sorry, not Daniela, Nina. Because she is, she was the one that was supposed to be the great hope of the neighborhood. She was the one that was supposed to go away and make something of herself. And I got the feeling that it wasn't necessarily an academic issue. It was just like the pressure of knowing that it was both racial pressure and feeling separated from her community. She told the story about how when she was at that like dean's dinner, which you only go to usually with good grades or invitation, how she's handed like the plates and is expected to clean up because they think she's part of the staff. I love that what she found was sort of like a reconciliation of the two. And part of that comes from the urging of Benny, who has found a way to both ground her and also elevate her. And I liked that as the story. I think that that's a very familiar feeling, being the person who is torn between the hometown and this life that you want to live outside of there, and wanting to make sure that you don't leave something important behind, like your personage and your culture, while you go out into the world. The Sunny thing's a little bit different. And I don't think that we didn't get full resolution with Sunny. And part of that's because this is a new storyline for the movie. Like the musical didn't go into this part with Sunny, like being undocumented. But the movie brings that into the forefront and pulls it around as a story that, one, is very timely for the stuff that's going on right now with DACA and the Dreamers, but also it provides an interesting resolution to the 96,000, right? Like, what are we going to do with where's that lottery ticket? Well, Abuela had it, and now Snavi has it, and now Sunny has a chance. We know that it's going to take, I think he said, like, it might take like 5 years before anything happens, and it might be a slim chance at anything. And I think the fact that this didn't have a glowing like a sunny disposition at the end of it is because the truth of the situation is that it is still an uphill climb for people who are going through the same thing. And I think my hunch is they probably didn't want to trivialize it. The character had hope and he had a fighting chance, but the reality of it still being a fight is still so important.
And he was a character that we would root for, but still, I don't think it would have been great if, he was just automatically like somehow, you know what I mean? Like resolved in a way that was like magical, right? Which is unrealistic. Does that make sense?
So definitely in the Heights too, Sunny gets resolution. That's the big thing.
Yeah. There you go.
Well, Jim, I think that, first of all, this has been an amazing talk. Made less so by the absence of Brad. I know that he had a very visceral reaction to this one. We've talked a little bit about this, and Brad, I know you're listening right now, so I can't wait to talk to you a little bit more offline about this. But Jim, I think now might be a good time to transition away from our talk of In the Heights. Maybe we're going to get on the A train ourselves and head over to Plug Town. Do you feel good about that?
I absolutely do. It's been a few episodes since we've actually had a chance to get into plugs, and So I had a bunch of stuff to pick from, and I don't know if I picked right, but we'll see.
I don't know if I picked right either. It definitely, like, I do sort of sometimes play like a leveling game. Like, I think Jim's going to do this, so I'm going to do this, but he might think that I'm going to pick this, so I'll pick this because I think that he thinks I'm going to pick this. And at the end of the day, I'm just like, you know what? Okay, this is what I'm talking about. I'll go first, and I want to plug a special that I found on Netflix. I think everyone found it pretty recently. Jim, you're nodding. It might have been your plug as well. And it's it is a comedy special by Bo Burnham called Inside. Bo Burnham is a guy who built his comedy career on the internet through the internet. You know, he came up writing songs on YouTube and just being sort of like a silly, weird, sometimes crass dude who evolved his style into Kitty. Jim's got a cat held up.
Trying to get him off my desk.
Yeah, no. I love it. I love it. But Bo Burnham built his career from his comedy roots into directing, I think, one of the best movies of a few years ago, and that's 8th Grade. But this comedy special is something very special. He films the whole thing, kind of one camera, just him. I shot it, I edited it, I wrote all the songs in this one room of his house, this one space during the pandemic over the course of, a year. And the songs really are something, I mean, there's something borderline deep about what he goes through here. He blends that, like, was it like ennui and existential dread, that I think a lot of us have felt recently. It's hard not to feel it, kind of, living through a pandemic. He filters all that through this like sense of like apathy at just his overall powerlessness to change any of the stuff that's going on around him. And he filters that through the lens of like, I've got 1,000,000,001 digital distractions. So what we get is this guy who is broken. He's numb that he's broken. And now he's going to just sing songs about those things that he's using to distract himself while he's numb about being broken. And it's relatable as fuck. And the other thing about that sounds dark, and it is dark. Like, some of the subject matter in here is really dark, but it's also funny as hell. Like, I found myself laughing so much at all of these songs and the way that he presents himself in the world. I do think that there's one that, like, once, like, he's doing a sock puppet routine where the sock puppet gets like super like aggressively political and dashes his own like kind of like routine to the rocks. There's this wonderful song about the welcome to the internet, like about all of the just different, like, hey, welcome, we've got everything all of the time, and it's both like exciting and alluring, but it's gonna fuck you up. White women's Instagram, which is just him doing just like a bunch of funny things that you see.
Earworm.
Forward and back, you're right, it's an earworm. It's on Netflix. I think Bo Burnham sort of created, like, I think he's created the anthem for this last year through this musical special. And so I would strongly recommend Bo Burnham's Inside on Netflix. Jim, you were nodding. You had a similar feeling.
Oh yeah. It probably would have been my plug. I just put it on. I knew of Bo Burnham from 8th Grade. He's done other comedy specials, as I've found out, over the last few years, and but I hadn't seen him, so I'm going to probably go back and watch him just based on the strength of this. This thing was incredible. I'm a sucker for. It wasn't obvious comedy. I don't think if you watch it, I don't think you can go into it thinking, okay, this is a comedy special. Where's the funny? He's not being funny. The comedy comes out of the situation and like some of the quieter stuff that's under the surface of this, like this dread that you said, like, okay, this isolation that he's feeling. But I'm also in awe of the creativeness of a lot of what goes on here. It's basically a one-man show that he produced himself, like ostensibly in this one room that he's stuck in, right, during kind of a studio apartment, if you would say. with electronics and lights and cameras and keyboards, and just like the creativity of not just the songs and how he peppers the comedy in, but how it's produced as well. There's some like stuff you're watching, you're like, how the fuck is he doing that? Like, it's just pretty astounding stuff. Like you said, Will, it's on Netflix. I double that recommendation pretty strongly. Yeah.
So if you would double that recommendation, I'm also interested in hearing what you would recommend yourself. What have you got for plug?
Well, I don't know if anybody else would recommend this, but I started this new series also on Netflix. It's a series. The first season is out on Netflix. It's called Sweet Tooth. It's a young adult. I didn't know anything about it going in. I just saw the trailer and I'm like, kind of looks intriguing. We'll see what they do with this idea. It looks kind of a little bit different. So basically what it is it's a story about kind of a near dystopian future where a pandemic due to a virus has wiped out a lot of people. And not only that, but at the same time, the emergence of what are called hybrid children, which are children who are kind of half animal and half human, or they're human with animal characteristics. And the main character, Gus, is kind of a deer boy, I guess you could call him. He's a young boy he has antlers and ears and super hearing. And he has a sweet tooth, and that's how the show gets named. But I guess it's based on a comic, maybe. I'm not sure about this.
Yeah.
Will, this is where your knowledge might come in. But before we get to that, I just want to say, I watched it. It's definitely feels like a young adult kind of thing. It's got a little bit of Stranger Things going on, kind of a vibe to me. A little bit of On the Road kind of thing, vibe going on. But I really liked it. I ended up liking it a lot. It has its moments where it's really great, and it has its moments where it's really like a little bit corny-ish. And maybe that's kind of appealed to a younger audience, but it also has some really dark stuff in it. Like, I'm not going to spoil anything, but there's some stuff like I don't believe they're showing this in this show. But I did really enjoy it, and I think it's 7 or 8 episodes. I did get through it in like a week and a half, and I'd recommend watching it. I want to be able to talk about it with somebody.
That's super. Like 7 to 8 episodes is super digestible. And Jim, you were not the only one that really enjoyed this one. I'm seeing comments right now. Our good friend Mary says Sweet Tooth is great. Parker loved it. It was a great graphic novel. And Tony says he watched Sweet Tooth this morning and absolutely loved the first episode. He says, I had no idea what the story was about, so it was nice going in completely blind. I
didn't know about it either, but another thing that kind of got piqued my interest was Will Forte. Will Forte is in this, and I loved Will Forte from, he was on Saturday Night Live, I think, but he was also in that movie Nebraska. If you saw,
yep.
Was it Nebraska? I think he was. With
yes,
right behind me. It was from.
That's the You movie.
Yeah, right over here. This hat right here. But Will Forte's great, and he has a role in this. The only thing I will say this about the series, they need to ditch the narration. James Brolin narrates it at different points of the show. I would prefer if they ditch the narration. I don't think it really adds all that much, and it really takes me out of the film, kind of like hitting me over the head with certain themes a little bit more than it really has to. But other than the narration, I think this is a great show.
I'm excited to dive into this one. I haven't had a chance to watch the show yet. It hit right at and we talked about this before the show, but I've been trying to like dip my toes into like Tribeca Festival right now and not doing a good job of keeping up with it as much as I'd like. And then Sweet Tooth hit during it. I'm like, I want to watch this. Because I had read Jeff Lemire is one of my favorite comic book writers, and he was the guy that wrote this. He also did an amazing Underwater Welder. He's great. But he is he wrote Sweet Tooth. I loved Sweet Tooth, and the fact that they made it a show, made it in such a way that it could be, you know, translatable as a young adult thing that both like adults and kids can appreciate, even if it's a bit dark at times. I think that's pretty rad. So my problem is going to be, do I watch this? Like I've started really enjoying like not binging shows and kind of watching them like over like a, do I just like not, Jim, that'll be my big question to you before we kind of move on. Like, do I just knock this out in a weekend, or should I like space this one out? What do you feel?
I would recommend spacing out a little bit more than one weekend, maybe over a week and a half, 2 weeks. Yeah.
Cool.
That's what I would recommend.
Like episode a day type thing.
It depends on how much it grabs you. You know what I mean? I think from show to show, you know, from cliffhanger show ending to episode to cliffhanger episode ending. So, yeah, I think for me, it's very strong at the beginning. The middle's a little up and down, and the end is, I mean, this thing really finishes with a really strong couple of episodes.
Okay, I'm hooked.
And I'm ready. And I really want the show to get to its themes. I want to know what it's really trying to say. I have an idea, but I'm not so sure. This whole thing about, there's a theme in here, buried in here somewhere, about nature, and nature kind of taking back, you know, what we as humans have done. I think it's not overt at all. Like, and it's not even stated, but I think it's trying to lean into something like that. And I would love to see it go down that road.
Well, this was a fun talk, Jim. Again, technical issues happened. We lost our Brad, but it was still fun talking about this movie with you. And it was fun having so many wonderful people, you know, Sean, Mary, Tony, so many people in chat joining us. I always feel truly blessed just to see like this cavalcade of just amazing people who join us each week as we, you know, rattle on about movies. But there's ways that we can talk about movies that aren't just on this show. That's connecting outside of it. Jim, if someone wanted to talk to you about Sweet Tooth outside of this podcast episode, how could they get in touch with you?
You can get in touch with me through my Twitter account. I'm at JJP Out West. JJP are my initials, and then Out West, all one word. I like to tweet about shows, movies. You know, DM me, at me on there, whatever. And you can also find me under my name, Jim Pugliafico, on Facebook. Drop me a Facebook message, or you know, talk that way.
I always love seeing your name pop up on Twitter, Jim, because you're always involved in like whatever kind of like the movie discussion of like du jour is. You know, you're popping in there with like, you know, like, oh, here's a good topic, or you're very quick to like weigh in on stuff, and I love seeing it.
Yeah, well, thanks, Will. And I know you've been kind of laying low on social media a little bit, but I always like to see your posts too.
Hey, before we go to mine, I want to address the amazing person in the room, and that's Brad, who just popped up on cam.
Hi.
Yay! Hey to Brad.
Brad's back for the end.
Gosh. Hey, Brad. Actually, do you want to give your socials?
Oh yeah. You can find me on Facebook under Brad Harris. I'm the one with Bear Chub Chaser friends in common with you. You can also find me on Twitter and Letterboxd at iBradPro. I didn't get to be here for the whole conversation, but I fucking loved In the Heights. Hope you will too. Go see it if you haven't yet.
Maybe we can convince Brad to film like an addendum that we can put out on Facebook. Like, you know, Brad's uninterrupted thoughts on In the Heights.
I'll do a little video. We'll see who cares.
Yes. Oh, comment from Tony. Let me read this one aloud. Wait, you live together?
Oh, we're husbands. We're in the same house.
Hi, Tony.
Hi, Tony.
The secret is out.
Wouldn't it be fucking rad if I just got up and walked off camera and showed up in there as well?
There's room for you right on this other side.
I could be right here. This is my spot, right
There have
Yeah,
been a few times where we have done the episode all together.
That's true.
Oh, those are delightful, and I feel like it's pretty cool that we're pretty close to a world where that can happen again as well.
Oh, I can't wait.
Yeah.
Can't wait.
Well, my socials, real quick. If you want to connect with me outside of the show, and please do, I love talking with all of you. I'm on Twitter. I'm at Whatever Cove. Twitter's the spot where Jim and I are involved in film Twitter discussions constantly. You can find me on Facebook. Just search for William Lindis. Just make sure that the one that you add, because there's two of us on there, is the one with the beard. That's the one you want to add. You can also find me on Letterboxd. Just look for William Lindis on there. Give me a follow. I'll follow you back. And connect with the show. We're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, we're on Twitter, we're on, you can find us on Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher, just all different places. Give us a follow and give us a review. Those reviews mean the world to us. We love to hear what you have to say about the show. So review us. We review the movies and you review the movie bears. Jim?
We'd definitely love to hear comments, reviews, whatever from anybody. Share
so
us.
much so. Share share us, yeah.
Sure.
Indeed. Well, love you all. Thank you so much for being with us this week. Sorry to pop back in at the end, but technical issues. But we appreciate you being supporters of the show, and we will see you all next time for Luca.
Woo!
Disney Pixar.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.